My brother's rehearsal dinner was held at a steakhouse my mother had been talking about for 6 months. The kind of place with dark wood panels and leather booths and a wine list that costs more than my monthly grocery bill. She'd made the reservation back in February, the moment my brother announced his engagement. She called me the same night, not to share the news, not to ask how I was, but to tell me what I should wear. "Nothing that draws attention," she said. "This is Theo's night." Theo. My younger brother by 4 years. The one who, according to my mother, could do no wrong from the moment he took his first steps. I want to be clear about something. I'm not bitter about my brother. I love him actually, in the complicated way you love someone you grew up with, someone who shares your blood but not your reality. Theo never asked to be the favorite, he just was. And I spent 29 years watching it happen and pretending I didn't notice. My father left when I was 7 and Theo was 3. After that, I think my mother poured everything she had left into him. I understood it, even then. I was old enough to remind her of the marriage that failed. Theo was young enough to be a fresh start, so I became the responsible one, the quiet one. The one who got a part-time job at 16 to help with groceries and didn't make a big deal out of it. The one who won a full academic scholarship to NC State and told my mother over the phone because she forgot to come to the awards ceremony at school. She said, "That's wonderful, honey," and then asked if I could pick Theo up from soccer practice on my way home. I moved to Charlotte after graduation. Got a job in software development at a mid-sized tech firm. Spent 3 years there, learning everything I could, pulling 60-hour weeks, building something in my spare time on the side. A platform for small independent retailers to manage their inventory and online storefronts without needing to hire a full tech team. I started it in my apartment on a secondhand desk I bought off Facebook Marketplace for $40. My mother thought I worked with computers. That was the extent of what she knew, and honestly, the extent of what she asked. She knew much more about Theo's career in pharmaceutical sales. She knew his commission structure, his territory, his company car. She knew the name of every client he entertained. And she could tell you the square footage of the condo he and his fiancée bought in Raleigh. She was proud of him in a way she wore openly, like a badge. I drove up from Charlotte the Thursday before the wedding. The rehearsal dinner was that Friday. I'd taken 2 days off work, which was no small thing given where things were at the company that month, but I didn't mention that to anyone. My mother hugged Theo for a long time when we arrived at the restaurant. She held his face in her hands and said, "Look at you," like she hadn't seen him 2 weeks ago. Then she looked at me over his shoulder and said, "You look tired." I was tired. I'd been back-to-back investor calls all week. But I smiled and said I was fine. His fiancée's family was warm and loud and immediate. They brought wine and told stories, and laughed too easily. I liked them. I sat beside my mother's sister, my aunt, who spent the first 20 minutes telling me about her knee surgery, and the last 20 minutes asking if I was seeing anyone. I wasn't. I hadn't been, not seriously, in almost 2 years. I'd been building something. At some point during dinner, my mother clinked her glass and stood up. She gave a toast about Theo that was genuinely beautiful. She talked about who he was as a little boy, about the time he saved a bird with a broken wing and kept it in a shoebox until it healed, about how she always knew he'd grow into someone worth knowing. She cried a little. Everyone applauded. She sat down and looked at me and said, quietly, so only I could hear, "I'm sorry. I should have had you say something too." "It's okay," I said. "You don't mind?" "I really don't." She patted my hand once and turned back to Theo. The wedding was Saturday. It was beautiful, genuinely. His fiancée wore her grandmother's earrings. Theo cried at the altar, which surprised everyone, including him. I sat in the third row on the family side and felt something loosen in my chest watching him, something I hadn't expected. I was happy for him. Whatever history existed between us and our mother and this family, I was genuinely happy for my brother. The reception was at a vineyard outside Raleigh, string lights and wooden tables, and a bluegrass band that turned into a DJ after 9. I danced with my aunt. I drank 2 glasses of a rosé I actually liked. I was doing fine. Then the toast started. My mother went again. She'd prepared something longer this time. She talked about Theo's heart, his drive, his career. She looked at his new wife with an expression I had never in my life seen directed at me, and she said, "I'm so proud of the man you've become. You are the best thing I've ever done." And then she sat down. Not one of the best things. Not a glance in my direction, not a quick footnote, just him. The best thing she'd ever done. I didn't cry. I want to be specific about that. I didn't excuse myself to the bathroom or grip the edge of the table. I sat very still, and I took a slow breath, and I picked up my glass and I drank the rest of the rosé, and I thought, this is not new information. You have always known this. You were just hoping tonight that things might be different. I stayed for another hour. I hugged Theo. I told him I loved him, and I meant it. I kissed his new wife on the cheek and told her she'd looked stunning. I said goodbye to my mother, and she told me to drive safe and asked if I remembered to give the gift card to the right envelope at the front table. I drove back to Charlotte that night instead of staying over like I'd planned. I sat in my car in my parking garage for a while before going upstairs. 15, maybe 20 minutes, not crying, just sitting. Then I went inside and opened my laptop. 3 weeks later, my phone rang at 7 in the morning. It was my business partner, and she was not someone who called at 7 in the morning. Have you checked your email? She said. I just woke up. Check your email. The company we'd been in quiet acquisition talks with for 4 months, a major enterprise software firm based out of Atlanta, had formally submitted a letter of intent. The number attached to it was not a number I'd ever said out loud in reference to my own life. It had 7 digits before the decimal point. I sat down on my kitchen floor. I should back up and explain something, because this is the part people want to understand, and it's easy to make it sound like it came out of nowhere, and it didn't. My partner and I had been building our platform, Shelfline, for 3 years. It started as a side project, became a full-time obsession after our first 50 clients, and turned into a real company when we closed a seed round 18 months ago. We had 4 full-time employees and a contractor team of 8. We had 412 clients across 22 states. We'd been profitable for 11 months. I hadn't told my family any of this, not because I was hiding it, because no one asked. Because the last time I brought up work at a family event, my mother changed the subject within 90 seconds to ask Theo about a sales conference he'd attended. Because I'd learned, slowly and without bitterness, that this part of my life was mine. It didn't need their approval or their attention to be real. My business partner cried on the phone. I cried on the kitchen floor. Then we pulled ourselves together and called our attorney. The acquisition closed 10 weeks later. There was a formal announcement, the kind that goes out to industry publications and business press. Our attorney sent us the final release the night before it went live. I read it 3 times. My name was in it. What I'd built was in it. I didn't call my family. I found out they saw it because my aunt texted me first. She sent a screenshot from a Charlotte Business Journal article with 3 question marks. Then my mother called. I let it ring. I wasn't trying to be cruel. I just needed a moment to decide who I wanted to be in this conversation before I had it. I called her back 2 hours later. She said she'd seen the news. She said it was wonderful. Her voice had a quality I didn't recognize, something careful and slightly off balance, like she was walking on ice. She asked why I hadn't told her. I said there hadn't been a right moment. She was quiet for a few seconds. I didn't know it had gotten so big, she said. I know. You should have told us. I tried a few times. It was hard to get a window. Another silence. She didn't argue, which told me she understood exactly what I meant. She asked if we could have dinner, the 3 of us, when Theo and his wife got back from their honeymoon. I said sure. I kept my voice even. I wasn't punishing her. I just wasn't performing warmth I hadn't been given room to feel. The dinner was at her house. She made lasagna, the one she'd made every Christmas when I was growing up. Theo and his wife brought wine. It felt almost normal, almost like a family, almost like I'd imagined it could be when I was younger. My mother had printed out the Business Journal article. It was sitting on the counter, I noticed when I came in. She didn't mention it for the first 40 minutes. Then she did. She picked it up and held it and looked at it, and she said, I want you to know I'm proud of you. I nodded. I mean it, she said. I don't think I've said it enough. I'm not sure I knew. I mean, I didn't understand what you were doing. I thought it was just a job. It was for a while. I should have asked more. Theo was quiet across the table. I think he felt it too, the weight of what was happening in the room, the accounting she was doing out loud. I don't need you to feel bad, I said. And I meant that too, genuinely. I wasn't there to collect an apology like a debt. I just need things to be different going forward. They will be, she said. I believed her, partially. I believed she meant it in that moment. Whether meaning it in a moment and changing a decades-long pattern are the same thing, that I was less certain about. But I was willing to find out. We had dessert. His wife told a funny story about the honeymoon flight being delayed and them sleeping on airport chairs. My mother laughed until she had to put down her fork. I laughed too. I drove home that night thinking about the word proud. How many years I had wanted it from her. How strange it felt to finally hear it, not in the moment I'd worked hardest, not at the scholarship ceremony or the seed round closing or the first time we crossed 100 clients, but here, now, because the world had printed it in a newspaper and made it impossible to miss. I thought about the rehearsal dinner, the toast, the best thing I've ever done. I didn't feel angry about it anymore, not exactly. I felt something more like understanding. She had loved both of us, just different, and the difference had cost me something I couldn't fully name. But she was trying in the kitchen with the printed article, and I was trying too, and sometimes that's what family actually is. Not the thing you wanted, but the thing you're both willing to work on when the distance finally becomes undeniable. My business partner and I have kept a small stake in Shelfline through the acquisition agreement. We still advise. We're already talking about the next thing. Last month, I bought a condo in Charlotte. Nothing flashy. I'm not someone who needs the square footage to prove something, but it has a second bedroom I've turned into an office, and in that office I have a proper desk now. Not a $40 Facebook Marketplace find, though I keep a photo of that old desk on my phone. A reminder. My mother calls every Sunday now. We talk about actual things, not just logistics, not just Theo. She asked about my work last week, asked a real question, and I answered it, and she listened, and then she asked a follow-up. It's not fixed. 30 years of a pattern doesn't dissolve in 10 weeks, but she's trying, and I'm choosing to let her. Theo texted me out of nowhere 2 months ago. He said, "I know you always had it harder than me. I think I looked away from that because it was easier. I'm sorry." That one I didn't see coming. I sat with it for a day before I wrote back. I told him I appreciated it. I told him I loved him. I told him the bird in the shoebox story was my favorite thing Mom said at the rehearsal dinner, and I meant that. He sent back a photo of himself at like age 7, holding that shoebox with the most serious expression on his face. I laughed for a long time at that photo. Here's what I know now that I didn't know when I was sitting in that car in my parking garage at midnight. You can love your family and still grieve the version of them you needed that they couldn't give. You can hold both. You can be angry and then stop being angry and still not pretend the thing that happened didn't happen. You can build something entirely your own, something no one in your life even knew to look for, and it can be enough. It was enough before anyone printed it in the paper. It would have been enough if they never had. I just didn't always believe that. I'm starting to now.